Hey everyone, in today's video I want to share with you my review and experiences of photographing on the Sigma 85mm 1.4 art lens. I hired this lens out for a couple of days because I really wanted to test it out and I've heard so many good things about it. So I decided to plan a couple of different photo shoots and I used the 85mm on the Sony a7 III, I used it on the Canon 5D Mark IV, and I also compared it to the Canon 85mm 1.2 Mark II lens as well. So throughout this video, I want to share with you all my thoughts, show you the comparison images, and share some raw, unedited images for you guys to be able to compare and look at for yourself. So the first thing I want to talk about is how the Sigma 85 worked on the Sony a7 III. I decided to go for the Canon mount version of the lens since I also wanted to use it on my 5D Mark IV, so I ended up using the Metabones 4 adapter to be able to use the Sigma lens on the Sony body. To my surprise, it worked so well on the day. The autofocus was really sharp and fast. Eye autofocus and face detection worked flawlessly throughout the shoot, and the model who I was working with was moving around really fast and it had absolutely no issues in keeping up with her movement. I didn't have any issues with the lens lagging or being slow to focus like I do when I use some Canon lenses adapted to Sony. Here are a few photos zoomed in to 100% that we took on the day, so you can see just how much detail there is in the shots. The Sigma 85 is such a sharp lens, so paired with the Sony a7 III, you can get some really amazing high quality photos full of detail and texture. If you want to watch the full photo shoot behind the scenes video, I just released it last week, so I'll leave a link for it in the description below. And we also did a live stream, which I'll leave linked down below as well. It was really fun to be able to hang out with you guys, and we selected all the photos from that photo shoot. So the live stream is a really great way for you to be able to see the hit and miss ratio of the focusing. Like I mentioned a couple of times, using the Sigma 85 on the Sony, even with an adapter, really felt like I was using native glass due to it being so fast and not really lagging in between any of the photos that I took. So I can definitely see myself using that camera and lens combination in a professional setting, such as during a wedding. I feel like it's so fast, so it's very reliable. In terms of how it feels in the hand, the Sigma 85 is an absolute mammoth lens, especially compared to the small Sony body. But I was really surprised that it actually felt quite comfortable to shoot with. I think due to the size of the lens and the length of it, it kind of falls right into your hand and sits really comfortably while you're taking photos. It's also not as heavy as it looks, which is really great. I think it's a little bit lighter than the Canon 85 1.2. Moving on, for the next photo shoot, I decided to compare the Sigma 85 to the Canon 85mm 1.2 Mark II lens. So I decided to use both these lenses on a Canon 5D Mark IV body just to keep things fair, and we shot a variety of photos during our photo shoot. Some of my first impressions on using both the lenses is that the Sigma felt very fast to focus while I was taking photos. The photos also looked super contrasty on the back of the lens. Both the lenses are super sharp to shoot with as well, and I also noticed that there is very minimal lens flare on the Sigma, especially compared to the Canon, which that's something we will get into in a little bit throughout this video. So to elaborate on some of those points a little bit, as I said, I did notice that the Sigma was that little bit faster to focus during the photo shoot. This is because the Sigma has a rear focus element compared to the Canon, which has a front focus element, which means that it tends to hunt focus while shooting. In saying that, the Canon 85 1.2 is quite an old lens, so it is a bit of an unfair thing to compare. But in saying that, the new Canon 85 1.4 also has a rear focus element just like the Sigma, so I'm really excited to be able to test that out soon. The only time I really noticed the Sigma struggling a little bit in catching focus was when we were taking these full-length photos. Pretty much all the photos I took in that location were slightly out of focus, and I only had a couple of sharp ones to choose from. I had my focus point set to the model's face, so I'm not sure if it was the busy location that we were shooting in that caused it to struggle, or if it was the particular lens that I was using, or perhaps it just struggles to focus at that focal length in general. I'm not really sure. I really felt like the Sigma 85 stood out so much in the close-up portraits, but at the same time time, I also think the Canon 85 really shines in close-up portraits as well. In terms of color rendition, I think images from both lenses straight out of the camera look very clean. Here are some raw and unedited photos straight out of the camera so you can have a look and compare for yourself. I find that the colors from the Sigma are a little cooler with some blue tones, and the colors from the Canon are slightly warmer with a bit of a green hue in the shadows and a more orange or just a warm hue to the highlights. If you shoot in RAW and edit the colors of your photos like I do, then this isn't really that important. It was really easy to color match the final photos I was editing with my Lightroom presets to make them look the same and cohesive. Last but not least, I decided to take some test and comparison images the next morning in my garden to test a few extra things out. Something that I noticed during the photo shoots is that I felt like I could get that little bit closer on the Sigma 85 to my subject when taking portraits. I tested this out by taking some photos of my lavender with both the lenses, and here is a comparison side by side of both 85mm. As you can see, the Sigma is ever so slightly able to get in closer than the Canon. This might seem pretty insignificant, but it's something that I really noticed when I was taking close-up portraits, and I really liked being able to get in that little bit closer. I feel like it did make a little bit of a difference in the photos. Next up is the bokeh test, and here are two side-by-side images for you guys to compare. To me, the Sigma bokeh is a lot sharper, more defined, and the bokeh circles are a bit smaller compared to Canon. The Canon bokeh is bigger, even though I shot both lenses at 1.4, but the bokeh circles kind of bleed out and aren't as sharp. And these images are also the perfect segue into my next point, which is lens flare. As you can see, the Sigma image has overall more contrast compared to the Canon. Even in this shot where the sun was to my top left, you can see quite a lot of lens flare or white haze in the Canon shot. So I decided to take some directly backlit shots on both the Canon and the Sigma to see just how the lens flare compares. Both lenses do flare like a typical 85 without a lens hood. The flare is this pretty haze that covers pretty much the majority of the shot, but I definitely noticed that the Canon flares so much more than the Sigma. This is a bit of a personal preference. I personally love capturing lens flares in my photos, and I think the Canon 85 1.2 has such a distinct and unique lens flare that I really love getting into my shots. But I can see the Sigma 85 coming in handy when you don't want to capture those creative lens flares in your photos. For example, maybe it would be really great to take photos during an outdoor wedding ceremony when you just want to get nice clean images with some nice contrast. So final thoughts, I think these are both two amazing lenses and I love photographing on both of them. There are a few things that set them apart from each other when deciding which one to go for, but it really comes down to personal preference and what you're after in your photography. So hopefully sharing with you these comparison images and some example photos can really help you decide between the two if maybe you're stuck or you don't know which one to go for. For me, I really love the creative and unique look you get from the Canon 85mm 1.2 with its soft bokeh and its really beautiful lens flare. But if you're after a cleaner look with your photography, then the Sigma is probably for you since it has very sharp images and high contrast as well. On the other hand, if you can't afford the Canon 85 1.2, the cheaper Sigma 85 alternative is still an amazing lens and definitely lives up to some great expectations. One thing I wanted to mention that I wanted to get your thoughts on as well is that I feel like the Sigma 85 really took into consideration new high megapixel cameras. It's a high resolution lens that delivers an amazing amount of detail in every photo, and I can really see it complementing current and future camera bodies. On the other hand, when you compare the Canon 85 to the Sigma, the Canon does actually feel quite vintage at this point. This isn't necessarily a bad thing. Like I said, I personally love the look and the unique feel you get from the Canon 85, but it is something to keep in mind when deciding between the two lenses, depending on your style of photography. Please let me know in the comments what your thoughts are on both these lenses. I'd love to know which one you prefer and why, as I really love hearing from you guys in the comments. But as always, thank you so much for watching. I release new videos every Wednesday and Saturday, so I will see you all next time. Bye!